Much of the Western Church ran away from the two giants decades ago, waded the Jordan and headed back into the wilderness where God definitely does not want us, does not want his church, and dived into our own version of Plato's cave, which you can note from my first video, hiding behind personal pietism and church life. Many compounded their error, carrying on through the desert right back to Egypt by supporting political parties doing everything God hates, assuming voting every few years is some sort of spiritual duty for Christians. More on that in a later video. Hello, I'm Michael Saxon, your policy Christian. I am the policy Christian since most Christians are still hiding in Plato's cave, somewhere out there in the wilderness. What happened to being transformed by the renewing of our minds so we're no longer conformed to the pattern of this world, as Paul enjoined or commanded us to do in Romans 12? Anyway, having got that off my chest, this is my third video, and it's an introduction to the Next Generation Church Evangelism Strategy, NGCS. And we're going to take a preliminary look today at the two giants, fascist liberalism and feudal corporatism, around which the NGCES is built. From there, the next vlog will focus on the principles and reform policies local churches can promote to do two things. One, expose the two giants, while secondly, or concurrently, extending opportunities for expansive church growth through evangelism. Now, a short recap from my second vlog, where I laid out the framework from the NGCES. Here's the overlay. You will recall the two giants are, along with the church in its current state, part of or make up the three facets of what I call the problem. All the evils now wrecking the West can be sheeted back to these two giants and the fact that the church has done nothing about it. This channel is dedicated to the policy mix that, if implemented, would force both into unconditional surrender, while at the same time concurrently permitting the church to use that very approach to expand opportunities for evangelism. Anything less may be rewarded with short-term benefits, but ultimately it will have no more effect than cutting the heads off the Hydra. If the two giants aren't stopped, the West is likely to go down. In fact, I would say it is definitely going to go down. Who are the people within the forces I'm calling the two giants? First of all, they mostly come out of the Western world. The feudalists among them have since well back into last century set out to hijack capitalism with a corporatist come neoliberal globalist economic model that is now crippling the West and by extension you and me. The fascist liberals are happy to partner with the feudal corporatists. They infest our universities, major public bureaucracies and the deep state, the legacy media and the political class. Together, they have formulated the economics and politics of death, and to use an economist's expression, created a massive social deficit marked by mental illness, division, mistrust, intolerance, dysfunction, suicide, dependence, rank despair, and the loss of hope. Let's take a closer look at the first giant, fascist liberalism. Since the 1960s, the West has been deliberately and systematically decoupled from its cultural roots and values. Socially dysfunctional policies and the usurpation of the West's democratic traditions have been orchestrated by a Marxist come utopian-inspired privileged class. They have marched through movements, political parties and institutions to build a centrally planned state, cut loose from its Judeo-Christian values that made Western civilization possible in the first place. Temperamentally attuned to views, lifestyles and grievances antithetical to the corpus of Western wisdom, they pathologically dedicate themselves to forcing minorities' mores on Western society, treating it as some sort of badge of honor to do so. The genesis of their upper crust hubris is variously found in Enlightenment philosophy, the cultural Marxists, and postmodern existentialism. And we all know, as Christians, who lies behind those lies. Then we have the feudal corporatists. They come in the form of banking, big corporations, and the financial markets. Their global corporate interests in investment, industry, and banking, coupled with their obvious affection for monopoly, power, and usury, which is the old term for interest-bearing debt, have usurped classical capitalism and classical liberalism. They have dovetailed with and co-opted the less fascist liberal political class to drive people towards reliance on public and private debt, the full suite of globalist neoliberal economic policies, materialism, and neo-feudal acquiescence. Financial power has been used to capture the fourth estate, academia, education, and all the strategic industries. The small clique of people driving it all are nothing less than a self-appointed corporate aristocracy bent on assuming or securing unassailable privilege and possessions at any cost to humanity, in keeping with their medieval predecessors. Now, the evil world they have conspired to create is so pervasive, it is hard to step outside it all to take its measure. We are all swimming in it. I will go into the specifics in more detail in later videos. All I will do at this stage is deal with what I call the politics and economics of death and dysfunction. Let's look at the more obvious examples as they come up on this overlay, and I'll leave you to read those as I go into what I call the religious doctrines or creed of the two giants, and I'll read them as if I was one of them rattling off their creed. First up, big all-pervasive government is vital. Protecting our vital interests, especially our wealth, power and privilege, requires subjugating everyone else so they cannot come for us, they cannot come and get us. We know what is best for your life and your children. Money must always be issued as interest-bearing debt so we can make huge profits and transfer all wealth to ourselves. Taxes, interest-bearing debt, and engineered crises are vital tools for controlling the masses. Free markets must be dominated and controlled by monopolies. Ordinary people should not hold or own anything and learn to like it. Ordinary people are parasites on the natural environment. Their numbers must be reduced using any means, including pharmaceuticals, abortion, and artificial foods. We must control everything. Ordinary people must be reduced to servitude, to serfdom, so they cannot challenge our superiority and rule. Science and law must be bent to our will to achieve our objectives. Democracy must or means rule by the few after near pointless elections by the many. Abortion and social welfare and economic stressors exist to reduce the population and create state dependence on us. Multiculturalism will cause distracting mayhem and eventually create the pan-world population we can control. Resistance, protests and objections, free speech, free will have no place under our benevolent control. Artificial intelligence will be used for transhuman purposes to genetically engineer the sort of slave humans we want. Democracy and freedoms must eventually give way to obedience and trust in our superior wisdom. Truth is what we say it is. Everything else is disinformation, misinformation, and of course, malinformation, as we choose to define those three. Now, you cannot imagine a more stupid, arrogant, and insolent set of evil ideas. And these people are not stupid, so they know much of what I've just reeled off is nonsense. They're all lies and must therefore come, of course, from the father of lies. And again, as Christians, we know who that is. So that's it for now. In the next vlog, I will be looking at the main principles and reform ideas that should guide just about everything in public policy if the West and the Church is to survive. See you next time.